Hello, everybody. I want to welcome you to this global Earth Wisdom call, which started a couple of years ago with Judith and I having 12 or 15 people joining us in this kind of network. And gosh, today we have people registered from United States and Canada and Europe and Africa and Australia and China, and we're just so happy that so many of you are present with us, really as representatives of the skin of Mother Earth, because we're all a part of the Earth. And it's not so much that we're on the Earth, it's that we are the Earth. We're different aspects of that. And I'm grateful for your being with us today. I'm going to begin today to set the intention of our circle by lighting some various plants to give us smoke. I'm going to try to do this without setting myself on fire. So I'm taking a match here and I'm burning some sage and some copal from Mexico, some sage from the canyon where I grew up, some juniper for balancing us, some sweetgrass to attract good energy and spirits into our midst today, and to give us light for this year ahead of us, and for gratitude for all of you being a part of our circle, and for Jack and Allison being with us today, and I'll introduce them in a moment. As a part of setting the energy of our circle, Judith's going to lead us in well, she's not going to lead us, she's going to sing.
Okay. Hey yana ho yana, hey yan yan. Hey yana ho yana, hey yan yan. The earth is our mother, we must take care of her. The earth is our mother, we must take care of her. Her sacred land we walk upon with every step we take. Her sacred ground we walk upon with every step we take. The earth is our mother, we must take care of her.
Oh, thank you so much, Judith. Yes, we're here as taking care of her, and as you say, with her taking care of us. Our theme today is White Buffalo Rising. Now, Jack and Allison and Judith and I were just talking. If you think about the great stories of our planet, of Mother Earth, you have the stories. One of the earliest stories is Gilgamesh. Another is Abraham. Another is Jesus. Another is Mohammed and Krishna and Buddha. And if you notice, a common characteristic of all of those stories which have shaped Western civilization is that the main characters are men. And another characteristic, which I think is of enormous importance, is that all of these stories are from the old world. And the great stories of the new world have not really gathered much attention by our mainline culture. But in this day and time, as we walk on a bridge to a new era, as we begin to listen to visions coming out of North and South America. We are getting all kinds of enrichment and direction for a way to go in a world that is struggling. But before we get into the story of the white buffalo calf woman, I want to talk and introduce Jack and Allison Jensen. And we're going to create a matrix or a context for this story by beginning with our own stories and then moving to the story of the white buffalo. So Allison is an accomplished person in many respects. She's written an outstanding research dissertation called Earth Medicine for her PhD. Transformations in Nature was a subtitle of that dissertation. Jack is an orthopedic surgeon, and as we'll see, he is a healer for a variety of people, including world-class athletes. So welcome, Allison and Jack.
Welcome.
Welcome.
Yeah. So let's start, Allison, with you maybe telling how we met, the four of us. It's been a while.
A long while. I think I'll start by saying that when we purchased Deer Dancer Ranch back in 87, we had an intention and a prayer that it could bless other people. And we specifically wanted to provide a way for people to connect with nature. And we started by having some corporate retreats there. We had people from downtown Houston in oil companies come out, and they really enjoyed the opportunity to just relax and connect with nature. Because even before the whole technological age, living in a city could kind of be a disconnect from nature. And so after that, I was in Vail, Colorado, and I'd spent a month there, and I went to the bookstore to get a book to read on the plane home. And I was kind of flipping through books when a book fell off the shelf and hit me in the head. And I picked it up and put it back on the shelf. And the lady sitting in the bookstore said, "You know, I've worked here for 20 years, and if I were you, I would buy that book because I've never seen that happen before." So I went over and I bought the book, and it was The Many-Colored Buffalo by Will Tagle. And I looked at the book and I thought, oh, I think Jack would enjoy reading this one on the plane. So when we got on the plane, I handed it to him and I said, "Why don't you read this book? I think you would enjoy it." And that was the beginning of our relationship, a book falling on my head.
Yeah, and it was a recently published book, and that was when we were with a major publisher, and it only been out a month or two, but in the publishing world, books that are not selling all that good get put on the top shelf that are hard to reach.
Is that right?
Yeah. So that's good. The synchronicity of the moment was helping in many ways. Yeah.
That was lucky.
Yeah. And then Jack, your side of the story.
Well, I read the book on the plane. I read it cover to cover, which is a little unusual. And I got home and I looked and I said, "Oh, this guy is from Houston who wrote this book." And I never have called an author before about their book. And as you remember, I called Will up and said, "Hey, I was really, really impressed by your book and I'd like to meet you." And so Will said, "Fine, and we'll meet over at Rice University, not uncharacteristically under a tree." And when we went over there and sat down, there was Will. He had a blanket And this is in the very academic part of the world, the medical center and Rice University. And here we're sitting here, and we just instantly had a, I think, a deep level of connection. And so I went back and I reread The Many-Colored Buffalo, and I realized how that has affected me in my life. And so this has been about 28 years ago. And what I'd underlined in that book was all about the vision quest. I was just really intrigued in what this vision quest meant. And I also noticed in the preface of the book, Will states, before turning this manuscript in, I had a dream. And his dream was that he was in a building by the freeway with a lot of glass on the building, and it took care of athletes and NBA players. So there's a sports connection to that. And lo and behold, when Will and I are sitting on that blanket, it came out that we were in the medical center area, both in identical buildings about 2 miles apart. And that led to us both going over to this building, either freeway in West Houston with glass, and we've ended up taking care of professional athletes, NBA players on the wall, etc. So there's a lot of this that you can say is synchronicity. Also, it's just of awakening, you know, whether that's prophecy or just kind of paying attention to things that happen at the time and how they manifest themselves later. This summer, I was in a bookstore in Colorado, not too far from where the Many-Colored Buffalo was, and lo and behold, there was a painter there, and had this painting, and I would say that pretty much resonated with us. Many-Colored Buffalo. So we'll talk about the many different stories and how and today how this goes on from there, leading up to the white buffalo. But a big theme to me, whether it be vision quest or whatever, things happen in your life, and they can kind of prophesy what's going to happen if you're aware that, and just kind of put that in your back pocket sometime. But that book falling off the shelf, what it has led to, and how many hundreds, maybe up to thousands of people that it's blessed in kind of a contagious mode of a vision quest or a sweat lodge or just an association with one person to the other, has really been magnificent.
Yeah, exactly. And I guess that's one of the main points we're beginning with for all of our participants from around Mother Earth's skin today, that all of us have these synchronous moments happening. And that's a word that Jung created in order to describe how Mother Earth, or how nature herself, reaches out to us. And bookstores are a part of nature as much as streams and mountains. And so if we could, all of us could just take in for a moment how beautiful it is that Mother Earth and a specific eco field is actually interested in developing our consciousness. And one of the ways we do that in the Earthtribe is with vision quests. And so I want to invite each one of you to tell a little bit about one vision quest that you've had. We have these vision quests once a year in the spring of the year, and where we go out for varying amounts of time and fast and sit in a circle and ask for a vision, not only for ourselves individually, but for the larger good of Earth. And this is the matrix of the rising of the white buffaloes we'll see later on. So Allison, maybe you'd help us out here.
Well, shortly after we met, you remember you came to the ranch and you did a vision quest.
Right.
And you had an amazing experience with a horse. And our son Justin, who was very young at the time, maybe 7 or 8, drew that horse while you were out. And so we knew there was a big connection there. And then after that, Jack did a vision quest. And do you want to talk about that?
Well, I would say, you know, there's kind of an essence of Vision Quest, maybe can be concisely said without an hour oration of all the different things that happen. But this Vision Quest, my name became Deer Medicine. And I had a vision of a deer walking down the road with all these diverse people behind the deer and following the deer, different ages, vocations, ethnicity. And I thought at the time, well, that's a very interesting thought. You know, we just have this ranch here, you know, and if you fast forward maybe 10 years later, I looked up and we were at a Vision Quest, and we had a deer out there named Lightheart. And I'll show you if I can see a picture of him. And there I am with Lightheart. Allison raised him from a little baby, and Lightheart was walking into the circle with many people following him. And I just looked up and I thought, my gosh, it happened. And I thought that was very, very, again, prophetic that was going to happen. But at the time, I had no idea what that vision meant.
Yeah, and that's an important point here is we have these breakthroughs from outside of ourselves that come in, which we're calling visions. And a lot of times we don't understand at all what they're about. But then they're self-transformative, but even more so, it's for the larger good. And so this was a vision that you had, just to repeat it for a moment, of deer coming down like the one you just showed, and with people, and they were, as I recall, indigenous people. And that vision happened, and then sometime later, in this reality, it began to happen. Namely, ultimately, hundreds of people would come to this beautiful, beautiful ranch, Deer Dancer Ranch, where we conduct these ceremonies. And that's really what we're encouraging people to think about today as we get to the bridge that leads to a new era, is that these visions, these moments, these inspirations are attempting to give us a little piece of the map that they can inspire us and take us across.
And I want to say, well, after that happened, Jack did the Vision Quest, got the name Deer Medicine. Then all of a sudden there was a herd of red deer at the ranch, and I was bottle feeding a baby deer every day. It really got my attention. And it was so physical, like you could actually see the vision happen. So I decided I was going to do a Vision Quest, and I've since done 6. But I want to tell you just a little bit about the first one. I usually talk about the last one, but I just decided I want to talk about the first one.
Good.
So I went out on a mountain in Colorado. I've spent a lot of time in Colorado hiking by myself. And suddenly I was terrified of being eaten by a bear, which I couldn't believe. You know, my rational mind is, what? And so I spent a couple hours being really scared. And then I decided to pray and dance and sing. And I did that for a couple hours, and it kind of got me over my fear. And I looked up and I saw an eagle flying into the sun. And to this day, I don't know if that was a real eagle or a cloud that looked like an eagle, but it went right into the sun. And all of a sudden, my awareness expanded, and I was one with everything. And this really impressed me, because after years of meditating and doing yoga and personal growth workshops, I had never had an experience like this. So I stood on this mountain and I sang this song, and it was a long song, but I want to sing just one verse that comes to me. And I'm not a singer like Judith, so but you'll get the feeling of it. I am one with the universe. I am one with the sky. I am one with the mountain. I am one with you. I am one with your vision. You are one with mine. We are one with all there is. We are one with love. And then from somewhere, this male voice started singing it back to me. And every time I would sing a voice, this person would sing the verse back to me. And so I got the name Vision Dancer.
Oh, wow.
And as that played out over the years, I listened to many vision stories by other people in the Earthtribe and how they'd unfolded in their lives. And I really saw deeply that we could learn from each other's visions, and that there is one big vision that we're all a part of, and that there is this universe of love that supports our development and organizes it and makes all things work together for our good if we're humble and open ourselves to pray and ask for guidance. So the song really manifested in my life through listening to other people's visions and sharing them and interacting deeply with them. So I was very blessed by that vision quest, and thank you.
Several comments on that. There's such a rich sharing that you have given us. And just the most obvious one is that we have a song in the Earthtribe for nearly everything, and sometimes several songs. And many of the songs that you hear in this broadcast through the years have come through vision quests to people who don't think of themselves as musicians. But in this new era, we're all singers. We're all conduits of the music of the universe. So I think that's important for us to connect with. Another thing, though, as you were talking, Allison, I know you mentioned that you've done various kinds of meditation, yoga, and Buddhist meditations, and so on and so forth, Christian meditations, prayers. But one of the things that's unique about our work is that in many traditions, there's almost an encouragement to disconnect from the sensual world. In many meditation techniques, it's like, let's say a beautiful bird flies by as you're meditating. And in some meditation process, you're encouraged to just let the bird fly by and then come back to a state of nothing. In our work, it's just the opposite. If the bird flies by, like the eagle, we're encouraged to embrace it and allow that sensual connection to lead us to a oneness. And this doesn't mean that there's a right or wrong way to do this. It just means that our emphasis is in connecting with nature rather than pulling away from or pushing off of. And that's really an important thing, because in this day and time, we've forgotten how to connect at a deep level. And the song that you sang is actually a song that comes from the mother tongue. And Jack's vision of the deer and the people coming down the road is a part of this, our slowly gaining a literacy in the mother tongue of Earth herself. So let me pause there for just a moment and come back, Jack, to you, and then Allison. Anything you'd like to say before we launch into the theme of the white buffalo?
Good. The only thing, just a little thought that I had, is that the name of the ranch is Deer Dancer Ranch, and from my parents and my Native American roots, which was Potawatomi from Kansas, Succinimity is deer dancer, which means one who walks the path of the deer. So that is what it's all about, is us getting on the correct path. Many different ways to say that, red road, all these things, but just exploring our own path and in doing it in community with others.
Yeah, good.
And I think I'd like to say, after we had been doing vision quests at Deer Dancer for several years, Jack and I decided to get a buffalo that was brown, and her name, it was a female, and her name was Chinoka, and present it to you and the Earthtribe because we thought that you would enjoy that. And Chinoka also blessed a tremendous number of people, and she was a very calm buffalo, and we liked to follow her around and listen to her breathe. And she subsequently had a number of buffalo until this year there were 20 buffalo eat a lot of grass.
Yeah.
So we had decided that they were getting kind of inbred, and we were going to sell them to some different ranches that would enjoy them. And we did that, but she had had many calves that turned yellow, and then they turned reddish brown, and then they turned brown, and then they turned black. And so when we sold them, one buffalo did not want to go, and his name is Yakaba, and he was a great grandson of Chinoka's. So we said, well, if he doesn't want to go, he can stay. And then we needed to get a companion for him because they're herd animals, and they like to be with their own like kind. So that's how we got to the white buffalo.
Yeah. Well, this is maybe a good place just to tell briefly the story, the grand story of the white buffalo calf woman. It's a beautiful story, and many of you may have heard it, but maybe some of you have not. And as the four of us were talking earlier, this is the kind of story that we could take 6 months to go into easily. So I'm just going to tell a very brief version of it. In the story, the indigenous people were in a period of extreme climate difficulty, a drought. And in the midst of the drought, they were seeking some kind of help to help them move through it. And so the tribe sent out 2 young men to see what they could find, maybe a vision or maybe a herd of some sort. And they came upon a beautiful woman. She was dressed in white deerskin. She spoke to them, and they were dazzled by her. One of the young men saw her as a sexual object, and he wanted to possess her. And as he sought to possess her, a big cloud came over all of them. A mist, an energy formed. And as that was happening, some energy moved around inside the cloud. And when the cloud dispersed, there was nothing left of the young man but his bones. It scared the other young man, as you can imagine. So he drew back his bow to try to kill this woman, but she held up her hands, and immediately he sensed a deep love coming from her. And she explained to him that she had been sent by the sacred mystery as a conveyor of divine love and peace, and that he was to lead her back to the tribe. And so he did. And when she connected with the community. She taught them over a long period of time and gave them 7 ceremonies to help in the enlargement of consciousness. And they came to love her and see her as the complete incarnation of the divine, of Great Spirit. The day came when she was to leave. And as she was leaving and they were singing to her as the buffalo white calf woman, as she walked away, she turned first into a black buffalo. And then she walked further and turned into a brown buffalo. And she walked even further and she turned into a red buffalo. And then finally, as she turned her head toward them as a buffalo, she turned into a white buffalo. But not a white buffalo as in the color of a piece of white paper, but a blondish white, beautiful, curly color. And at that moment, she promised them that at some time, at a crucial moment in the story and life of Earth, she would return. She would give them a new domain, a new dimension of consciousness. And she would come in the form of a white buffalo. And so for indigenous people, all through this hemisphere, but particularly in North America, this is one of the most revered stories. In the old world, stories like Abraham and Gilgamesh and Jesus and Moses and Buddha and Socrates, these stories are greatly revered, and rightly so. But now we think it is time for us to take all of our visions and allow them to point us in the direction of a time of peace and compassion, and most important, connections with each other and with all creatures that go beyond our differences. So that's the story of the white buffalo. And it's an important story. But in the telling of that, I want to pause a moment with the 3 of you, Judith and Allison and Jack. And just as I tell that story, and people all around the world who are listening to this, I'm inviting you to do the same thing. What do you connect with as you hear the story?
I think one thing I've connected with as I've thought about this is what the white buffalo represents. And you could look at statistics, 1 in a million is very few, obviously, but there's a few more white buffalo appearing now. And one author I read talked about the white buffalo having 2 foot in the present and 2 feet in the spiritual world. And he used the term bridge. That's an agent of bridge for us to return to spirituality, to return to nature, and affect a very positive change.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
I think what I connect with, you having said that, Jack, is that our visions really have been a bridge between the spiritual world and the material world. And when I interviewed people, every single person was able to tell me how their vision unfolded in their life, which I was surprised by, because some of the visions are symbolic, like an eagle flying into the sun, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And they all got great transformation and personal healing from their visions and they translate it into the material world. Secondly, I think it's a message, the white buffalo is a message of love. I know that when we decided to bring the white buffalo to Deer Dancer Ranch, it was really a gift of love for you two and for the Earthtribe. And lastly, hope. Like, I think it's been a very difficult year, 2017 for Houston and for the Gulf Coast and many places in Texas. And I think the white buffalo in a time where people were starving was a message of hope and love. That's kind of what occurs to me.
Good. Judy?
Hope was the word that came up for me too about the white buffalo. I love the story. I love the fact that white is about purity, is about light. White is light, and the buffalo was light. And it took me back to my very first vision quest, which I'm not going to tell the whole story, but what I learned in that vision quest was compassion, deep compassion. And it had to do with a very large Native American man who they chose to be my guide, and he scared the heck out of me because he was just huge, and I had all of this judgment about that. And I think of the white buffalo as really being the purity of understanding and having compassion for others and not judging at all, because I wanted to be judgmental of this man and it just didn't work. I ended up just not falling in love with him, but just respecting him so much for what he did for me. And the white buffalo story just immediately took me back there. It's been decades and decades and decades. So, so I got a beautiful name from Bear Heart, which was sees with the heart. And it's really good. So I thank the white buffalo and Bear Heart, and the whole process of vision questing is very powerful and meaningful, and a lot of teaching happens through that process. I hope.
Right. Thank you, Judith. And really that's a characteristic, I think, as we move into the new era of being able to see with the heart and finding a way for our rational selves to support the seeing with the heart, because actually that's what vision questing is about, is seeing, intuiting with the heart, perceiving from another dimension information and meaning that are coming across the bridge to us to lead us along the way. I'm going to ask Dan if he can now bring up for us just about a 2-minute experience of the white buffalo. And I'll just set the context for this. We have an annual Earth Dance at Deer Dancer Ranch in the fall of the year. And the white buffalo was present on the ranch, and we had been wanting to see her, and we'd seen glimpses of her off maybe several hundred yards and away in the woods, and Jack and Will Turner, our grandson, and I had been catching glimpses of her. Time passed, and later that afternoon we were driving into an area of the ranch where she is. That ranch is 600 or 700 acres, and we commented to each other, wow, I wonder if we can see the white buffalo. And suddenly she was off in the distance, and we said, oh, we wish she would come a little closer. And this is what happened. So that's a very special moment when our grandson took these videos and then created this film. So Judith, I noticed you were moved by that. Would you say kind of what was happening with you as you were watching?
I don't know if I can talk about it. I don't know, just so beautiful, such a beautiful, beautiful being. And then I go back to the experience with Will and being up close with Wild Heart, and it just touched my heart. Just touched my heart.
Yeah, and that's the beginning, isn't it? The awakening of our hearts. And Jack and Allison, what were your responses as you were experiencing that moment with Wild Heart?
I felt really grateful to Joe, who is the manager at Deer Dancer Ranch, who really investigated white buffalo and found this one. And when we saw her, we just thought she was such a gentle being and a gentle spirit, and we just really loved her, and we knew the Earthtribe would love her and that you would too. And so just feel really grateful to have her there.
Yeah.
What was really resonating to me is I felt like Wild Heart really epitomizes what this ranch is supposed to be. That it has the symbol of hope, manifestation of a prophecy, love, but at this point in time, everything that's been done up to now is to put that ranch in a position to keep blessing people and letting essentially Wild Heart lead the way in that. It feels really good, like that's the purpose of that land.
Yeah, good. And you know, I think this is special for you, Jack, as well as all of us. I might just say the requirement to be in the Earthtribe is that you love the earth. If you love the earth, you're in. And it doesn't matter, you know, what your race is or what your politics are or anything else. If you love the earth, you're in. And but aside from that, Jack, you're an enrolled member of the Potawatomi tribe, and your great grandfather was an important medicine person. And so my guess is that in some ways this is fulfilling a prophecy for you personally as well as the larger earth.
Yeah, the short story is my dad grew up on the reservation, and my grandparents, grandparents and great grandmothers named Ozakwa, so they're full-blooded Potawatomi Indians, and I still have some of their healing eagle feathers. So in a way, genetically, maybe I was going to be a doctor somehow, you know, but there's a lot of different ways to heal people. And so that's why I kind of feel like getting back to my roots, not only Native American roots, it could be any other ethnicity. But the thing that has struck me lately, if you look at Homo sapiens, whenever he or she starts, and you go 100,000 years, that you had to be in nature to survive, and consequently, you were really bonded with nature, and you realized how important it was, and to how to take care of nature. It's only been in the last 100 years or so of age of mechanism that put us inside with machines and things that took us out of nature. So we're really hardwired to be in nature. That's what our soul is about. That's what our physical body is about. And our DNA isn't much different than it was 100,000 years ago. So it's a real challenge right now to kind of awaken nature back in people. And I think this, you know, many different ways to do it, but this ranch is one way to allow that to happen.
Yeah, exactly. And just by way of information, we all conduct healing ceremonies that are informed by modern medicine as well as ancient medicine. And we we invite people who want to come spend time. We have something called Earthtribe Immersion that Sheila's put on the chat box, where you can come and spend some time with us. We also have, besides vision quests, we have healing ceremonies where people who have a particular illness are able to come and experience the healing process that we tap into. And in fact, this might be a good moment just to say a brief bit, Judith, about the healing you experienced from on the deck. Well, I'll just set the context. Jack and several of us were in a teepee there on the ranch, and we had about 20 or 30 people inside the teepee, and Jack had passed out 20 or 30 eagle feathers, and they had me as a surrogate. And so we had people, if you can picture in your mind's eye, eagle feathers being fanned in a teepee in the middle of the night, sending healing energy to Judith when she was recovering from cancer.
This has been several years ago, and I was very disappointed, of course, that I couldn't be at the ranch for the Vision Quest. But I was not well. I was filled with chemotherapy and sick a lot and just not in good shape. Have a wonderful cat called Quanah Parker, and he always stayed with me, and he was very intuitive and tuned in to me. So I felt like he was a healer, was going to helping me heal. So I went out on our deck, and we have a big buffalo robe, a wonderful buffalo robe. And I knew that, I'm pretty sure it was the midnight pipe, because we do a pipe ceremony all night long. And it was the midnight pipe. So I took my pipe and the buffalo robe out onto the deck. And it was a pretty pleasant night. It wasn't really cold or anything. And so I wrapped up in the buffalo robe, and unbeknownst to me, I mean, I didn't know really what was going on because I was into myself, really. This bolt of energy, like being kind of shocked by electricity or something, went through my body. I mean, it really scared me. And I just was shaking and trembling. And Quanah kind of got freaked up too. He sort of just jumped off of me and went up on the deck. And I just couldn't make out what was happening. And then I remember that there was healing going on in the teepee, and that perhaps this was healing me in some important way. And I've never forgotten it. And every little once in a while, I'll have that sensation, and it's a good sensation now. It scared me pretty bad at that moment. Maybe I was going to die or something. But so that was a pretty amazing thing about the Earthtribe and the ceremonies. I don't know of a white buffalo being there at that time, but I was in a buffalo robe and got buffalo medicine.
Yeah.
That would have been a good name, buffalo medicine.
Yeah. So we'll probably have another experience later on, Jack. When we were in Teotihuacan, Guy Danielson and I, Guy is a brain surgeon, and we were performing what we were calling psychic surgery, which was a healing of drawing the energy of the earth right there at the pyramids into people that we were working with. And so, just so all of you know, we're constantly experimenting with ways of drawing the medicine of the earth through our bodies and minds and souls, and seeing how love and compassion can be conduits of this healing. So thank you so much. I want to go to the chat right now and recognize a couple of comments. This is from Denise in Bavaria, Germany. She says, feeling so connected. grateful and deeply touched right now. Thank you for reminding, and just thank you so much. And Denise, you're sending that good energy to us from Germany, I take in. I have a comment from Ruth. It doesn't say where she's from. It says, very, very touching, calling forth to and from the depths, living purpose and mystery. And from Canada, Kathy Mines. Wow, straight to the heart.
She's the force of nature.
Yeah. Thank you so much. This is from California. What stood out to me is the gift she brought was the ceremonies, speaking of Buffalo Calf Woman, and the consciousness that the prime directive is to protect the life givers and allow the women to have a voice in caring for the children, and crossing the bridge from the fourth to the fifth world of peace and illumination, as in balanced humanity in equality and justice. Beautiful, beautiful thoughts. And of course, that's a theme. Some of you were asking about the book, Many Colored Buffalo, was published by a major publisher and is out of print now. But in my recent books, I have updated that. And really, in the last book, I speak quite a bit about the bridge from the fourth to the fifth world. And very important. And thank you so much for joining us and bringing your chat into our midst. So I want to circle back to you, Jack and Allison, for some closing thoughts about your experience of being in the circle today. Yeah.
It's just been a very enjoyable experience to be here with you and to kind of go back through some of the history of the Earthtribe, which has greatly blessed our lives. And I'm very grateful for all of the experiences that I've had with the Earthtribe. I've really seen that even if you love nature, being in the Earthtribe can make you connect on a whole nother level. And one thing I've really seen in my research is that when people connect with nature in these ways, such as the Vision Quest, it really enhances their relationship with nature. They spend more time with nature. They are more aware of nature, and many times actions become sustainable just out of the experience, which also surprised me. I thought, oh, we're going to have to really educate for sustainable action, which is also true, but sustainable action can happen just out of a change in consciousness. And I'm grateful for the changes that I've had in my consciousness as a result of the Earthtribe, and for the opportunity to share deeply with others. So thank you.
Yeah, good. Jack?
One thing I was thinking about, particularly with Judith telling her story, I reflect back, there was a book called The Anatomy of an Illness by Norman Cousins. Mm-hmm. And they asked Albert Schweitzer a question in there, and it really resonated to me as an orthopedic surgeon. They were trying to trip him up about the healers in Africa and witch doctors and all this. He said, what do you do if someone comes to you, have a broken bone? And he said, well, I said it. Then I sent them to the healers. And I always thought that this, part of what we're doing here is giving people an opportunity with a community for healing on a very sound basis, and using current medical things, prayer, different avenues of what fits that person. And the great thing I have liked about the Earthtribe is there's no specific dogma. People are really open to dialect and discussions, and that's why this format is so great. To not only go around the world for people to pick it up later if they miss it in their different time zone, etc. So thanks to Dan so much for allowing this electronic miracle to happen. Thank you, guys.
And thanks to the two of you so much for being here with us. And we'll revisit this. We'll actually we're having a series on visions that lead us across the bridge. Next month we'll have Heather Ash Amara, who will be talking about her inner fire and the vision of the goddess. And we'll really look forward to that. And then later on in the spring, we'll have people who have just returned from vision quests who will share out of their lives what they've seen. And when we say what they've seen, we're not talking about necessarily what you see with your eyes, though that might be involved, but what they perceived from the invisible world that might help us all in finding moments of hope and love. So Judith, if you would bring us to a close here.
Okay, I'm going to sing a song, a chant really, and some of you have heard it before, but this is from one of our Earthtribe people, Matthew Biddendorf. White buffalo rising, rising, 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 white buffalo rising.
Oh.
That was prophetic.
Yes.
That was before we got the white buffalo.
See you next month.
Love you guys.
Thank you.
Blessings, blessings to
Again,
all.
thank you, Jack and Allison. We love you.
Thank you, Jack and Allison.
You're welcome.